Hello, brothers. I wanted to record this last session for you, reviewing the last assignment, the last exegetical and homiletical assignment for your Proverbs passage, assignment 321. There is one more after that, the sermon document for your Proverbs text, but I wanted to cover the last few steps here for you as you prepare for our module, which again is coming up on June 16th to 20th. We're getting everything set up to have our preaching labs there and then do the module 4 on prophecy. So you guys push. If you push at this point, you're going to be more than halfway when we show up and meet together on in June in a few weeks. You'll be over the hump and more than halfway through the course. So really encourage you to push as much as you can and do your best. And again, if you're not finished with everything to this point, that's okay. Please still come to the module, and I know that you'll be able to get caught up as time goes on. But with that, let's jump right into our review of assignment 321. Here we're going to be considering the last few steps in the process of preaching your text. And so up to this point, we have done all of these exegetical steps. We've reviewed all of them together and the assignments related to them. And here you can look. I've just identified them by the first 3 steps we did for assignment 315. That was back in session 3.8, which again you can access on my YouTube channel under the playlist Cebu 3, Module 3. Then poetic analysis we carried out after that, and that was on a few assignments because that's a more detailed step. So we had 3 assignments where we did that, and the sessions 3.9 to 311 cover those. Then the block diagram, assignment 319 and session 312. And then our last session, we focused on assignment 3.20, which covered these last 3 steps of the exegetical process, culminating or ending with the exegetical idea of the passage. Again, that's the main goal, right, for the exegetical process. And with that, then we turn the corner. We turn the corner now towards the sermon. All right, we've done the exegesis. You're right, those are the first 9 steps. Book level, then passage level. Now we're focusing on the exposition, these last several steps that will cover that particular part of the process. All right. So with that, give me a second here to get this fixed. Okay. So with that, let's move forward. What's the first step as we transition from the exegetical idea to the sermon? We want to consider the timeless truths in the text. That is, what the text meant and what the text means, right? We've gone from the exegesis. Now we're moving towards the exposition. Okay. And if you remember, the timeless truths are what is the bridge between the author's world and our world, because that's what we're doing here. If you remember, right? We've been in the author's world. We've been looking at what he wrote, trying to identify his intended meaning. We've done all of these various steps to come up with that exegetical idea that we expressed in the what and the why and the how. And now we want to move from the author's world based on what he said to his hearers. We want to move to our world, to our hearers. And how do we do that? Do we preach exactly the same thing that the biblical author wrote, or is there some difference? And what we want to remind ourselves of is that the biblical author wrote based on timeless truths applied to his circumstance, to his hearers. And those same timeless truths will apply to us today. Now, the way they apply may be a little different, but it's the same. We'll have the same doctrines, the same principles, the same timeless truths from which we are working from. we've again discussed this. This is nothing new. We've looked at this previously, so this is just going to be by way of review. But remember, the timeless truths should follow these principles, right? It should be, of course, reflected in the text. Timeless truth should be timeless, not tied to a specific situation. Again, the timeless truth should apply both back in Paul's day to the Philippians as it will to us today, or it'll apply to the timeless truth will be the same for the Israelites in the days of Moses as it is today. Now, again, how it applies, how it connects to us, uh, there may be some differences there, but it's the same timeless truth. For example, the timeless truth, love your neighbor. That applies to every person at all times, in all history, every place. Now, how that is expressed may be different depending on the situation, depending on the circumstances, depending on the culture. In one culture, if you extend your hand to shake hands, that's a sign of showing love. In other cultures, that would not be. You would do another expression of greeting. Some cultures you can, if you're asking someone to come here, you might do it this way. In other cultures, that will be offensive. And so we want to have a sensitivity to the culture and how we would express love to others in that particular culture. Again, that's why the timeless truth is not culturally bound. So if the application may be culturally bound, but the timeless truth upon which it is based is not. Should correspond to the teaching the rest of Scripture. The timeless truth will not contradict another timeless truth from another text. It should be relevant to both biblical and contemporary hearers, and we can summarize it in a short sentence. Now, let's do this exercise for Proverbs 1, 8 to 19. This has been our passage that we've been using as an example in going through the assignment. So I want to just continue doing that. I'm going to read the text here just to remind us, get us familiar with the text again, and then we will I'll identify just a few timeless truths that I see in the passage. Okay? So let's begin in verse 8, Proverbs 1. Hear, my son, your father's instruction. Do not forsake your mother's teaching. Indeed, they are graceful wreaths to your head and ornaments about your neck. My son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. If they say, come with us, let us lie await in blood and wait for blood. Let us ambush the innocent without cause. Let us swallow them alive like Sheol, even whole as those who go down to the pit. We will find all kinds of precious wealth. We will fill our houses with spoil. Throw in your lot with us. We shall all have one purse. My son, do not walk in the way with them. Keep your feet from their path, for their feet run to evil, and they hasten to shed blood. Indeed, it is useless to spread the baited net in the sight of any bird, but they lie in wait for their own blood. They ambush their own lives. So are the ways of everyone who gains by violence. It takes away the life of its oppressors. All right. So from this passage, again, which we have been looking at in our previous sessions as our example text, let's consider what timeless truths we might see from this passage. All right. And to do that, here, let me set a couple of things up for us here. All right. All right, I've got the text on the right side, so now this might help a little bit as we go through. So what we want to do is identify what timeless truths do we see here in the passage. All right. One, we might look at verse 8. God intends parents to be a source of biblical instruction, of wisdom for their children. All right, so we can write that down. God intends parents to be a source of wisdom for their children. All right. All right. So sorry about that. Okay. Sorry for the delay there. Okay, so that's one particular timeless truth we can see from the passage. Perhaps another, as we go through the text, is the love of money is the root of all sorts of evil. In fact, I didn't read this. Um, right, this is kind of a we sort of see that in this expression of greed. So the love of money is the root of all sorts of evil. Of course, that's expressed in 1 Timothy 6 as well, but we see that here in this text. Uh, Verse 15, we must not give the flesh an opportunity to sin. Right? That's the instruction that Solomon is giving here uh, to his son. Don't give the flesh an opportunity. Don't give in to the temptation that's being put before you. All right. And that would be consistent like with Romans 3:13, 14. Make no provision for the flesh in regards to its lusts. Another timeless truth we see here is that sin will not go unpunished. All right. That sin has consequences. That's in verse 19. Um, Verse 18, right? The harm one plans for another will happen to him. What you sow, you reap is the idea. And we see that in verse 18. They lie in wait for their own blood. They ambush their own lives. So what they are planning to do will happen to them. And of course, that's in Galatians. Um, what you sow, you reap, or Esther, right? Okay, so these are some examples. There's some more in there, I'm sure, but just to give you an idea. So you're just looking for biblical principles that are the basis for what is said here, principles that are true in every time, every place, every culture, and don't contradict another timeless truth from another passage. Okay, and that's the focus here, and that's what you want to do in this particular part of the assignment. Okay. So with that, let's keep going. The next step, after you identify the timeless truths, so you're moving again from the author's world to our world. So you first want to identify what are the biblical principles, the doctrines within the passage that are uh, a timeless truth that would also apply to us today. Following that, timeless truths. Next, you want to meditate on the poem. And this is, again, a step that's same as the other genres that we've done with narratives, with epistles. At this point in time, before moving to the sermon, before thinking about what it is that you want to say to your hearers, you first need to let the Holy Spirit, through the passage, speak to you. And this is a step we often don't give much attention to. And I think I've placed it here in the process because it's something we should consider. What do I need to learn from this passage? What do I need to apply? How should it affect me? How should it lead me in prayer? What are the things that I should see from the passage? What does the text mean? Praying for God to give insight and wisdom, praying for God to give ideas for your application in your life, praying for strength to be able to live out the truths that you've discovered. And as well, asking the Lord to guide and direct you in the preparation for the sermon, to prepare the hearts of the people. Those things would be fine to do. But meditation is really taking a step back. You're not doing any more study. You're not thinking about the sermon or anything like that. You're thinking about, what does this text mean? How does it apply to me? And I also like to memorize the passage I am preaching, unless it's a long passage. If it's a long passage, I might take a few key verses from it, um, but I want to try to memorize the passage that I'm preaching, and I do that earlier in the week as well, but especially here so that you can recite, think about it, consider it, and how to respond in your own life. So memorizing is great because then you can carry it with you. You don't need to have the written text with you. You have it with you in your mind wherever you go. All right. So I like to have that. This is one of the steps before moving to the sermon. And here um, I put down, so again, meditation's the idea of letting the word dwell within you. So it's going over the passage. What are the key points of the passage, the timeless truths, the exegetical idea? What does it mean? And how does it apply? Pondering these things, going over and over them in your mind, thinking about these types of things, and then praying in response. And Paul gives Timothy uh, the exhortation of the importance. Take pains with these things, be absorbed in them, so your progress will be evident to all. Let no one look down on your youthfulness, but show yourself an example to those who believe. All right? Persevere in these things. All right? So this is Paul's exhortation. Timothy, apply what you're teaching. Be an example. Give effort. All right? So we want to follow that example as well. Okay? Now, here's an example for the assignment. So what I asked you to do, and again, same as the other assignments, is at this step in the process, I want you to spend, 45 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour or more just meditating on the passage. Go out for a walk, think about it, go in a prayer closet, get away from distractions, and just focus on the passage and what it says, how it applies to you, and how that leads you to prayer and what you pray for. And so, what I'd like you to do for the assignment, just summarize that meditation in a paragraph. So, write down what are thoughts that came to your mind, what are applications that came to your mind, and how did it lead you to pray. So, let me show you an example from my meditation on the Proverbs 1 passage. This is what I put. So, this is a format I'd like you to follow. I spent 60 minutes reflecting on the passage in Proverbs. I was reminded of the importance of the scriptures as the source of God's wisdom. I considered several self-probing questions. How much did I truly depend on the word? How much do I seek answers from the scriptures for help in my personal life or in ministry? I was also reminded from the passage of the dangers of sin and how much temptations surround us. What temptations do I give into? What areas am I most susceptible? And then I thought of some specific ways. The last few verses of the passage show the seriousness of sin and its consequences. And then now I put down some of the things I thought about in prayer. I prayed that God would remind me of these things when I'm tempted. I prayed God would help me to preach the text with conviction, that he would move the hearts of the hearers to treat him with greater reverence and awe. Okay? So it's just a paragraph. It covers how long you spent meditating, what kinds of things came to your mind, what kinds of applications, and then how did you pray? How did it lead you to pray? All right? So that's what I want you to do for the meditation step. Now, once you've done that, you're ready to generate the homiletical idea. The homiletical idea. Okay, so now that you have the author's intended meaning, the exegetical idea, you've looked at the timeless truths, you've meditated on the text, the personal application and focus and prayer. Now we can move to the sermon. And the first thing we want to do in the sermon is to identify what's the main point of the sermon, what is the outline of the sermon. That's the homiletical idea. All right, it's not the same as the what, why, how of the author, but it has that the what and the why of the author will lead to your sermon main point, and then the how of the author, the outline of the text, will be a guide for your outline of the passage. All right? So again, remember, sermon main point, this is where it all starts. You need to have a main point. It's like I mentioned to you in class, if I have a baseball or a ball and I I throw it to you, you're more likely to catch it. But if I have a handful of sand and I throw that to you, I guess I should have said pickleball, right? If I have a pickleball and I throw that to you, easier to catch than a handful of sand, isn't it? I might get some of the sand, but not all of it. And that's the same in the sermon. We want to summarize that sermon into a key point, a key idea, the main idea, and repeat it. And that's what we're throwing to our hearers. And they'll more likely grasp it and remember it if you do that. But if you get a bunch of different thoughts scattered around like a pile of sand and you throw that at your hearers, they may get a thing here or there, but they won't see the main idea that you're expressing through the passage. All right, so we want to throw that pickleball, not a handful of sand. All right, and the sermon main point is a summary of the sermon in a clear, succinct, accurate statement derived from the author's exegetical idea and the timeless truths of the poem. All right, so what makes an effective sermon point? Okay, remember these principles again, the same thing as we've looked at for epistles and narrative. The sermon main point should be accurate. Derived from the exegetical idea means you understand the text. So you've studied it. You know what the author's intended meaning. You understand the main point that he is expressing and those timeless truths from that passage. So your sermon main point needs to be accurate. And secondly, it needs to be clear. Okay? Keep it simple. Avoid complicated exegesis. You must understand the text, and then you must help your hearers to understand the text. And that's the requirement for preaching. Accuracy, clarity. That's what's demanded. You're not preaching biblically, you're not preaching scripture if you're not accurate and clear. You need to be both. All right? Now, there's a couple of other objectives in the sermon main point, but the first two are primary. The first two are, without exception, required. Also, what's helpful is if you make your sermon main point directed, that is, connect it to your hearers, make it applicational, give it purpose, direct it to them, something for them to respond to, an application point, if you will. And finally, make it memorable, make it brief, give it some aesthetic quality so it's easy to remember, make it striking. And I'll show you an example here from Proverbs 1. All right. Remember the exegetical idea. This was in the last session. We talked about this. I just gave first a general statement. The focus of this passage of Proverbs 1 is the danger of sin and how others tempt us to sin, the importance of heeding wisdom's call to run from temptation so we will not suffer the consequences. That's sort of in a long sentence, the idea of the passage. And now I express it in a shorter statement, the what. This is, again, the exegetical idea. The what was heed wisdom's exhortation not to go with sinners who entice you. That was the author's point of the text. And why? Why did he say that? It's because there are serious consequences if you do that. Okay? Now, the how. Again, that's the author's outline. Heed God's wisdom through parents. Maybe I should do this. Show the whole screen here. So you can see the text on one side here. Okay. So heed God's wisdom through parents. That's verses 8 and 9. Do not follow the enticement of sinners. That's verses 10 to 14. And then finally, the consequences of sin. Verses 15 to 19. All right. So that's how I see the poem, those three stanzas from what the author said. Now, taking the exegetical idea, remembering the timeless truths, now I want to consider a main point for the sermon. Here's one thing I put to start. The need for wisdom to avoid sinners or face the consequences. So we want to ask the question. Remember, it needs to be accurate, clear, directed, memorable. So is it accurate? I would say yes. It reflects the main idea of the passage. Is it clear? I think so. It indicates the topic and the main idea. Is it directed? That is it focused toward the hearers? Not really. It just says the need for wisdom. It doesn't direct it to my hearers. Is it memorable? Well, it's kind of long and it's not very, there's not much style or aesthetic quality or ways to remember it here. So it's adequate. There's nothing wrong with this, but main point, but it could be improved. So let's try another one. Wisdom's call to avoid sinners or face the consequences. Okay, it's accurate, right? Still describing wisdom, the importance of avoiding sin or watch out for consequences. Is it clear? Yeah, I think it indicates the topic, the main point. Is it directed? It's better. Notice that wisdom calls us to avoid sinners. So that's incorporating the hearers, but it could be more directed. Is it memorable? Well, again, not that brief, not appealing, not a striking statement that would be memorable. But again, this would be fine for our main point, but we can make it better. So let's consider this one. Obey wisdom's warning to avoid sinners or suffer the consequences. Okay, how about this one? Is it accurate? Yes. Again, wisdom, avoiding sinners, the consequences. So those elements are still there. Is it clear? I think it is. Is it directed? Yes. Notice, obey. That's a command. It's an exhortation. Do this. So respond. Now, is it memorable? Well, again, not that brief. Still 10 words long. Hard, would be hard to remember. Again, it's a better main point, but we can improve it. How about this one? Weigh carefully wisdom's warning. You see how I think that's a little bit better, isn't it? It's accurate. Yes, still calling us to respond to wisdom and the warning. So the idea of consequences is implied there. It indicates the topic and main point. I think it's clear. And yes, it is directed. It's given now as an imperative. Again, weigh, that's the idea of do this, weigh carefully. So that's directed to the hearers. And then is it memorable? Yes, brief. It's only 4 words and it's striking. Note the W's, weigh, wisdom, warning. So weigh carefully wisdom's warning. That will be something easy to repeat as you go through the sermon. And I think it's short enough. It'll be memorable enough that people will catch it. All right. So we'll go with this as our sermon main point. Now, the outline. What makes for an effective sermon outline? Well, actually, the same thing that makes for an effective main point. Accurate, clear, directed, and memorable. And added to that, the idea of let the outline points, they need to be linked to one another in some way. Make them parallel, connected to one another. I'll show you how to do that and to the main point. Okay, so here's our sermon main point that we came up with. Weigh carefully wisdom's warning. Now the outline. How about this? Heed wisdom's call, beware sin's call, and know sin's consequences. All right. Notice each point I would say is accurate. It reflects the text. We have the heed wisdom's call from parents, right? Beware sin's call. That's the temptation. And then know sin's consequences. It's clear they're directed. They're all in the form of command. Heed, beware, know. And I think they're memorable. 3 words each. And there's some parallelism. Wisdom, sin, sin. Call, consequences. All right. Now we might be able to improve that. I'm sure in some ways it could be made better, but at least I think it's a pretty good main point and outline. All right. So hopefully through this, you can see the idea we're trying to convey here. Okay. And that's it. That's it for the assignment. Let's take a quick look at the assignment just so you can see it here. Assignment 321, homiletical idea. And as I've done all the other assignments, the format here, I give you the instructions. So there's 3 steps in this assignment. Identify the timeless truths, meditate on your passage, create a homiletical idea. And I give you the guidance there as well. And then an example. So this example that I just went over with you for Proverbs 1, and I put in the timeless truths, meditation, and then the sermon main point and outline the homiletical idea that I just expressed. All right. And then I give you space to do the same thing. Now, I know it's only a page here that you'll probably come up with. So it's a short assignment in that way. But here's a, you really want to give this some thought. All right. The timeless truths we'll need you to carefully think about. Meditation, that will take some time to carefully meditate. And then for your homiletical idea, your main point and sermon outline, don't just throw one together. I mean, it took me some time to come up with the one I showed you in this example. And the more time you put in, the better effort you put in, the more you're going to make it helpful and memorable for your hearers. So let me encourage you to spend that time necessary for an effective main point. I had one preacher that was giving instruction. I was in his class once, and he was talking about sometimes he'll take an hour or two even to come up with his homiletical idea. So he gives it some serious thought and attention and prayer. So I want to encourage you in the same way. And then once you've done this, once you've completed this assignment, there is one more assignment. That's the sermon manuscript. And you're going to follow. It's going to be the same as for your Psalms sermon. You're going to follow the same steps. It's going to be a deductive sermon. You state the main point up front, and then you'll show that main point through the outline as you go through the passage, going through. And again, that outline will follow the stanzas of the text. You'll preach through it, as you're doing, again, the same, the point, proof, picture, plan, persuasion, problem. So you're going to state the point. So state the main point, then state the outline point. You're going to explain it from the text, then illustrate it, apply it. That'll include the persuasion, calling us to respond. And then as you transition from that point to the next one, you'll repeat the main point, repeat the previous outline point, state the next one. So help us follow you. And then remember application, but also remember, how does the gospel connect to this? Make sure to incorporate the gospel in your sermon. Remember, we talked about Proverbs, preaching Proverbs. The key verse of the book is given right after, in Proverbs 1:7, if you'll remember, right after Solomon gives the notes himself as the author, gives the instructions of or the purpose, of the book, why he wrote the Proverbs, to instruct the naive, to give wisdom to the simple. After he did that, and then just before the first poem of the book, really, let me show this to you. Notice, all right, so here's the purpose. It's to know wisdom and understanding, to give prudence to the simple, to the youth, to the wise man. All right, so these are the audience. And then notice verse 7. So verse 8, he begins the first poem, and we've been using that as an example. But before he says that, he gives this sort of summary statement. We talked about this in class. The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge. Ignorant fools despise wisdom and discipline. There it is. This is the key passage, key verse in the whole book of Proverbs. Where does wisdom start? What is the foundation to knowledge? Is it just learning facts? Is it just studying these passages, getting the information from them? Certainly we must do that. But notice he says here, the foundation, the beginning, that's like not just in time, but also in priority. The beginning, the foundation, the chief element of knowledge. And then later on, I think he says the same thing in Proverbs 9, verse 10. The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom. Knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. All right, so this is where it starts. The fear of the Lord, the fear of Yahweh. Knowing him. Okay? That's really a statement of the gospel. Fear of Yahweh is this idea of a relationship with God. Wanting to know and follow him. That's the key. So as you're preaching the Proverbs, remember that, brothers, that you're not just giving some wisdom information to help us live life better. Certainly wisdom will help us live life better. But the idea is wisdom is biblical principles applied to life as a expression of our relationship with God. And that wisdom comes as we desire. The wise man's the one who desires to know what God says, to know who God is, and then to apply what God tells him to his life in the way to live in the way God would have him live. And that's why it says fools despise wisdom and instruction. Why? Because they despise God. Psalm 14 says the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. All right. So that's the difference between a wise man and a foolish man. Not that the wise man just knows more things than the foolish man. It's the heart, the disposition of the heart. The wise man wants to know so that he can live it out. The fool does not. And that's why Jesus even said, the wise man builds his house upon the rock. Foolish man builds his house upon the sand. Not because he's dumb, but because he would not listen. And that's what Jesus said. The one who heeds these words of mine, the one who's willing to listen, wanting to listen and apply, he's like the wise man who built his house upon the rock. The one who does not want to heed is the fool. And so remember that as you're preaching, this idea of this really is always coming back to, how does what I'm learning, this wisdom, how does this help me to honor Christ in my life? How does it help me to express the fear of Yahweh? All right. So keep that in mind. Looking forward to hearing your sermons. Stay diligent on getting those assignments done. Have your sermons ready to preach as we gather together in June 16th, 20, which is a little less than 3 weeks from now. So yeah, a little more than 2 weeks away. Okay. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to message me or message me on Facebook or email me. Be happy to help. Please make every effort to come. I would love to see you, not only just to be able to hear your sermons, but to fellowship with you, to see how you're doing, for us to pray together, sing together, and to spend time with one another, learning from the Lord. So God bless you. Look forward to seeing you, brothers, in a couple of weeks.